then once disease starts becoming widespread, then the government will enact either the National Emergencies Act or the Public Service Health Act, which will strip you of your medical autonomy. And then once you lose your medical autonomy, then that means that the government can force you to take a vaccine or to get tested for a certain disease, etc. Hey folks, welcome to my bug out location here out in the middle of nowhere. But today's topic is a pretty serious topic because you are going to learn how you will face government tyranny in a post-collapse world. And not only will you learn what kind of tyranny that you will face, you will learn how state and federal governments will do it legally and use that tyranny like a boot to your neck and to take away your freedoms and control you. Now let's get this out of the way at the beginning. At any point that somebody wants to start pounding on their keyboard telling me how I'm all wrong about everything, all I ask is that you watch the whole video before you go pounding on your keyboard. Now let's first set the stage for this video. Let's say that a coordinated, widespread cyber attack has taken our systems down across all or most of the country. Banks are closed, you can't withdraw your money, gas stations aren't running, you can't pump fuel, semi-trucks have stopped running, so there's no food being delivered to food warehouses or grocery stores. The lights are down across the country. And then boom, suddenly you have rioting and people burning down buildings and stuff like that because they are angry and hungry, because they are angry and blaming the government because the government has not fixed everything like the government promised. So one of the first things that your local government will do is going to be to cite a civil Defense Act so that they can enact even more emergency powers. And then the federal government, beyond your local and state government, the federal government, again in an attempt to quell this rioting and looting and the burning of buildings that's going to be widespread across the country, they will enact emergency laws like the National Emergencies Act and the Insurrection Act, and they will probably also declare martial law. And these laws are extremely important to know because the governments can enact these laws in a widespread emergency to take away your freedoms and try to control your movement when the world is burning around you. Now let's first look at the National Emergencies Act. This act allows the president to declare a national emergency. And it doesn't just stop there. It allows the government to control the media, aka the news media. It allows them to control communications, seize your property, control your movement, and also deploy military on U.S. soil. Now let's look at the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act also allows the president to deploy military forces on U.S. soil, but it also allows the federal government to enforce its laws just in case your local government doesn't want to enact those emergency laws. So if the federal government says, hey, you have to stay inside your house, you can't move about, and your local government says, hey, we're not going to listen to what you say, we're going to let our citizens go out and do what they want, then that Insurrection Act allows the federal government to send in troops to enforce that act. Now let's take a look at martial law. And martial law allows for the suspension of civil law. That means that instead of your local police arresting you, it would be the military that would arrest you for breaking whatever act that the government had already put in place. And instead of facing trial in your local court, you may be facing trial at a military tribunal. And under martial law, if I have this correct, the military would be able to come in and search your house and your property without a search warrant. So now, since we've talked about some of the emergency laws that the government would enact when we have widespread looting and stuff like that, let's talk about how this would play out for you. Let's talk about how if there was widespread looting and the burning of buildings and stuff like that, how would this play out for you? The first thing that the government will do is they will establish a curfew, which means that if you are caught during those curfew hours, that you face arrest. And then when the rioting and the looting continues on into the daylight hours, then the next thing the government will suspend will be your right to assemble. And they will suspend that right to assemble under the guise of trying to keep rioters and looters from forming into groups to continue their burning and their looting. And this may mean that you may not even be able to attend a church service if your right to assemble has been suspended underneath a national emergency. And then when that rioting and that looting is still continuing underneath that nationwide cyber attack, then the government will take away your freedom of movement to try to quell that rioting and that looting. They will tell you that you have to stay inside your house, and that if you even open your front door and walk into your front yard, that you face arrest. And then when that rioting and that looting and that burning down of cities across the country continues to go on, at some point, the government will enact martial law where the military will actually take the place of your local cops. And like I mentioned earlier, under martial law, the military takes the place of your local police. And actually what will probably happen is that the local police will be put under the command of the military. And then if you are caught congregating or even walking out of your house, then you face arrest by the military and face a military tribunal instead of your local court and a jury of your peers. And then while all of this rioting and looting and stuff like that is still continuing to happen, then the government will probably suspend your freedom of speech and the freedom of the press, and they'll say that they had to do this to control the spread of misinformation, when in reality it will be so that the government can try to control the narrative of what's actually going on. Now, I think it's very important to remember that if the government has any technology still working at this point in this widespread looting and rioting, that the government will really go heavy-handed on surveillance. The government will say that this surveillance is so that they can try to identify people that are doing the rioting and the looting, but my belief is that the government will try to use that surveillance to identify and punish anybody that goes against their narrative. Now, the next thing to really watch out for is that once our infrastructure crumbles more in this widespread emergency, once our infrastructure crumbles more, water's not running, sanitation's not happening, then you will start seeing disease becoming widespread. And then once disease starts becoming widespread, then the government will enact either the National Emergencies Act or the Public Service Health Act, which will strip you of your medical autonomy. And then once you lose your medical autonomy, then that means that the government can force you to take a vaccine or to get tested for a certain disease, etc. Now, here is some good news, and that is that the United States of America is so large, and there's so many conservative states and towns and cities that even if martial law, nationwide martial law is enacted, the chances of it being enforced nationwide is pretty much, I believe, nil to zero. Now, I want to really clarify that statement there. If martial law actually got enacted across the whole United States, our country is just too big. There just are not enough military or local police or UN soldiers or all of them combined to actually enforce martial law across the whole country. Now, what the local and federal governments will do is they will choose what cities they need to enforce that martial law in, since they can't enforce it across the whole United States. And they're going to choose the cities and places where the rioting and the looting is the worst at. They're going to choose places that they need to keep in operation, such as ports and places where goods are produced, etc. So now you know 3 different laws or acts that you really need to familiarize yourself with. The National Emergencies Act, the Insurrection Act, and martial law, because I think it will be mainly those 3 things that the government will use in a post-collapse situation or a widespread emergency, but that will be the main things that they use so that they can control you and your property. So now, what is your thoughts on this video? And be honest, before this video, did you know about the National Emergencies Act or the Insurrection Act? Comment down below. And an important thing for us preppers to remember is that after SHTF, a simple scratch can lead to your death. So to see a playlist where you can learn how to make a whole bunch of different natural medicines from the plants that grow around you, things that can treat infected skin cuts and high blood sugar and high blood pressure, then click on the video that should be appearing on the screen just about now to learn what 90% of most other preppers don't know. Anyways, folks, this is enough internet for me today. I do need to get back to work, but folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching. And I pray that you have a good night.